The Ruger 1022, America's .22 rifle of choice, says me. And says a lot of other people. There's been a lot of Ruger 1022s sold. And they can be configured. Their modularity is second maybe only in the rifle world to the AR-15. They can be set up in a lot of different ways for a lot of different things. How would you go about that? What would you want to do to make your 1022 the best for X, Y, or Z? That's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns, tactics, ballistics, the right way with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am your host, Michael Melito. Why you should care what I have to say, not because I have a microphone, not because I have a bunch of cool guns posted on the gram, not because I have a bunch of corporate sponsors, but because I've been blessed with a lot of real-world first-hand experience. Because of that, I'm going to throw in a rapid-fire version of the bio, and I'll probably mention a little bit more about my experience with the 1022. Blessed to have served in the military, law enforcement, combat veteran, private contractor, competition shooter, lifelong hunter, guide. Blessed by God that He got me through all those things so I could share this firsthand training, knowledge, experience with you to serve you today. Let's dive into the podcast. Now, if we're talking about how to make the Ruger 1022 the best for X, Y, or Z, we should probably start by talking about what it's good at just basically right out of the box. And there's a lot of different models now, but I'm talking about just your basic Ruger 1022. The blued steel, wood stock, iron sights, 16-inch barrel, flush fit 10-round magazine. Right, your basic Ruger 1022. What is that good for? Well, that's one of the reasons that it has become so prolific and so widespread across the American shooting landscape. It is so good at so many things. It is a good, just general purpose 22 trainer. It is a very good small game hunting rifle. Can you make it better? Arguably, depending on what you want to do. But, if you're just walking around shooting jackrabbits and you might shoot one on the run at 10 yards and you might shoot one standing still just before it goes over the ridge, or I guess sitting still is more likely for rabbits, at 75 yards, that Ruger 1022 with the sights it came with, it's good. It's a good all-around rifle if you just want to learn the basics of marksmanship. Now, those open leaf sights aren't my favorite. I prefer a peep sight, but those open leaf sights for learning are great. And they're a great trainer because many other rifles share those sights, like the older Remington 700s, Winchester Model 70s, the AK-47, right? That open leaf sight design, Mosin Nagants, right? Many rifles share that basic shooting design. So if you learn on that, it's pretty good. And this wasn't meant to be a precision rifle, right? It's kind of a general do-it-all semi-automatic 22 rifle. It's good for that right out of the box. It's reliable. The triggers aren't the best, right? But they're serviceable. They're okay. It's a good all-around rifle. Let's talk about some of the other models they make, and there's a lot, so I'm not going to cover them all. I'm just going to cover some of the other ones and why you might go with them. The big one that I would go with, and the one that I did go with when I was a young lad, so young that I had my mom go and buy me a Ruger 1022 decades ago. I can't remember if it was the first right gun I bought with my own money or the second I may have bought a better shotgun. I was given a 410 bolt action by my uncle that didn't work, and another uncle got it fixed up for me to hunt with. I can't remember if after that I bought a better shotgun or that Ruger 1022. So it's my first or second gun. I still have it. It still sits above the bed. I still use it and I still train with it. But the route that I went, that I would encourage you to look at, is stainless. If you can go stainless, almost always go stainless. Why would you not want more corrosion resistance? Why would you not want more longer lasting, less maintenance required? Just why wouldn't you go stainless? If it gets a little bit of rust on it, you can take some steel wool to it. You don't have to get it refinished. Just why wouldn't you go stainless? So the big one is the all-weather versions, the stainless version. So if you live, I would say anywhere, but if you live anywhere with any kind of harsh environment, right? If you live in Arizona, you probably get away with a blued steel gun. But if you live in, I don't know, coastal Georgia or the southwestern part of Alaska, right? Stainless steel makes a lot of sense. So stainless steel, if you can go stainless steel, look at the stainless steel all-weather models. That's something that Ruger has historically done very well. They do a lot of models in stainless, and they have been doing that for quite a while. They were one of the early movers, I think. Not the very earliest, but one of the earliest movers on stainless steel guns. So that all-weather model, that's a good upgrade. If you want a little bit better for shooting out of the box, they do make the Sporter models with a little bit longer barrel, the Sporter length barrel. I think it's 18 or 18 and something. They have offered in times past several thick bull-barreled, unsighted, just straight-up target models, like to mount an optic on and that's it. If that's what you are doing, that's not a bad choice. And they obviously make a lot of commemorative models and stuff like that, which doesn't really do much with their performance. The next big one I'm going to talk about is their takedown. It's kind of a game changer. Before, when you wanted to take down 22, and they're not bad rifles, but the AR-7, what's now Henry, but the Air Force survival rifle, the AR-7, it's a really cool gun. The Marlin Papoose, same thing, really cool gun. But if you were going with a takedown in days of yore, you would give up a lot in ergonomics and like rock solid longevity and reliability. The Ruger 1022, you don't. You get the same great ergonomics, you get the same rugged reliability. I haven't found them to be any weaker or any less reliable or any less accurate for that matter than a regular model. So the takedown model, if you wanted all to backpack with it for survival, to put it under a seat, for anything like that, and you want not just a 22 that takes down, because there are lighter 22s that take down, there are other models of 22s that take down, but if you want just a really good 22 with good ergonomics that you would shoot day to day and wouldn't mind taking hunting compared to any other 22, but also takes down for survival, for ease of storage, for whatever reason, that Ruger 1022, I think the term game changer is often thrown about ridiculously, but I think the 1022 takedown really was a game changer because you could have a really good rock solid 22 takedown that shot and was reliable and rugged like a regular 22, a really good 22 rifle. You didn't give up ergonomics, you didn't give up a forend, you didn't give up longevity. So that 1022 takedown is a phenomenal thing. And I would be remiss if you just want one of the most beautiful rifles ever, and affordable. They've made several different models, but the 1022 International, it's got, if you like the style, and I do, I like the aesthetic, it's kind of like a 69 Shelby Cobra to me. I just think they're beautiful. Right? If you get that full length stock that goes all the way out to the end with the iron sights on there, that International style 1022 is just gorgeous. So if you just want a beautiful, beautiful 1022, I don't even have one, but I've seen them and I'm like, I really want one, but functionally, you don't need one, but they're just gorgeous. So I figured I would throw that in there if you just want one of the most beautiful rifles, period, ever made. The Ruger 1022, beautiful lines, still a great gun. Anyway, I'm going to throw that in there. Now, let's talk about what you might want to do to upgrade to make your 1022 a little bit better. The first place I'm going to start is the trigger. I said the trigger was serviceable. If you told me I could either upgrade the sights or upgrade the trigger, I would upgrade the trigger first. Now, Ruger does make a very good aftermarket trigger, the BX something. It's their Ruger factory trigger. It's a drop-in, it's all one unit, and it's not expensive, and it's good. It's actually what I have, and I have had other triggers that were arguably better. But if you're just looking for a simple solution, you don't have to be a gunsmith. If you can drive out a couple of pins, it will work. It is the BX trigger, the Ruger factory trigger. It comes in one big trigger housing. The cool thing about that is that you can take that out and you keep the entire other factory trigger. Because if you shoot a lot and are hard on your guns, things kind of break. So you can keep that one, throw it somewhere, throw it in the bag. If you've got the Ruger 10/22 takedown, you throw it in the bag that you're keeping the gun in, and if something happens, a lot of the things that break on guns are those small parts. You have that entire extra module, and all the parts are in there. And if you were in a hurry, you could just swap out the whole trigger system. So that Ruger drop-in trigger system, it's got a decent trigger pull. It's got a good trigger pull. I'd even call it good. And it's affordable. It's made by Ruger. I'm sure it's had its testing done. They're good triggers. The other one I'm going to recommend is the Volquartsen trigger kit. You can get those. Now, you had better be a halfway competent gunsmith to be messing with that. But if you are, it's a good trigger. It's not bad. Volquartsen, if you don't know about them, they're kind of the creme de la creme in the 22 world of like high-end competition and precision 22 stuff. Volquartsen, they make a trigger kit that is very good. It's a delicious trigger. So if you're looking, you could also go that route. And there are many more, but those are the ones I have the most experience with. So you might look at those. And if any of the other big manufacturers I don't have experience with make a trigger for the 10/22, like, say, Timney or things like that, I'm sure they work just fine. But the ones I have the most experience with are the Ruger factory trigger and the Volquartsen. Probably much more experience with the Volquartsen. Now, going to the next thing, sights. Those factory sights are decent, usable sights. And if you just want backup sights, which I encourage you to do if it's for any kind of serious use, I like backup sights. So those are good backup sights. If you just want a backup sight, the rear one folds out of the way, the front one's pretty rugged, right there. They're a good usable sight. So if you just want backup sights, I would just leave them. If you want a better sight, there are a couple of options. The number one option I'm going to give you are the tech sights. They are very good if you conceptualize in your brain like a good military peep sight, like you would get on an M16, like you would have had on an M1 Garand. They're not quite as complex as an M1 Garand or an M14 sight, but they are very, very good, adjustable, usable peep sights with a very long sight radius. It hangs the rear sight all the way on the back of the gun, and of course your front sight's way out towards the other end of your gun. Long sight radius is good for sighting in for precision. If you want to become a master iron-sighted rifleman and you want a trainer, I would really recommend those tech sights. You also may look at Skinner sights. You also may look at some other sights like the Williams. The Williams actually what I have on my oldest 10/22, the one I was telling you about. They're good sights. They're not as rugged, but that's like not my go-to survival 22. So they're fine for that. They're a good sight. They're not nearly as rugged, I think, as a tech sight. If you told me I was going to take one with tech sights and one with the Williams sights and drop them on the ground 10 times, I would be more confident that the tech sights would not break and hold true to zero. But they're good sights, the Williams peep sights. They're not bad either. I've got experience with both the tech sights and the Williams peep sights. They're both superb. They're both good. And if you want to become a really good rifleman, then you should look into those. Now, Skinner or XS, if they make sights for them, I don't have specific experience with them in the 10/22, but they make good sights. If you're going that route with the peep sights, you might look at a good military sling or Rhodesian style sling, or just one of the old web slings or the military leather slings if you want to learn how to shoot with a hasty sling and a loop sling or a Rhodesian sling. You may really look at those options if you want, again, to become like a master iron-sighted rifleman. Now let's talk about optics. And this is going to be controversial, because everybody now wants this giant glass, like some bulbous abomination bobbing on the top of their gun. I differ from that opinion. I do not. I want a sleek, svelte, handy, big enough optic to get the job done. I'm a real big fan of a fixed 4X. I would be a fan of a fixed 2.5X if I could really find a decent one. But the fixed 4X for a 22 especially for a hunting 22, is phenomenal. If you're talking about a tactical trainer, then go with something more akin to what's on your fighting rifle, and that's going to be case specific. But an LPVO 1-4 is also phenomenal on a 22. But the thing about a fixed 4 is a fixed 4 has less moving parts. Fixed 4s are simple. If you don't know what else to do, I would just look at a fixed 4. If you want an affordable one, the Simmons 22 mag has been kind of a standard for decades. It's not the best, it's not bad, and it's affordable. A fixed 4X with some good mounts, don't skimp on the mounts, is a phenomenal choice for an all-around 22, because a 22 Hunter is not like a tactical door-kicking machine, right? You probably don't have, if you're hunting small game and things, you're probably not going to have a target at 0 yards at muzzle distance. You're probably going to be somewhere between 5 yards, and the max practical range for hunting living things, aside from a specialty prairie dog type rifle, which we might get to later, you're talking 200 yards, and a 4X is plenty for that. So a fixed 4X is a good all-around. Again, if you don't know what else, if you're just like, I want a scope on the 22, a fixed 4X is a fine option. Now, there's nothing wrong with a 2-7, and there's nothing wrong with a 3-9, but you're trying to get bigger and more than you need. And we have this thing in America, bigger is always better, more is always better, supersize it, double quarter pounder with Cheez-It. You don't always need more. A fixed 4X is a fine scope, and it's a fine scope on a go-to general purpose 22 and hunting 22. Says me, you may disagree. If you just have an extra 3-9 laying around or something, I'm not going to fault you for it if you want to put it on there. And again, that LPVO is not a bad option. Don't go with some giant obese monstrosity that's 30 millimeters or 34 millimeters. Try and find a 1-inch simple LPVO if that's the way you're going, for a good general purpose hunting scope 22. And a simple 1-inch or 1 1/4, 1.5 inch simple sling 2-point will work fine. One of the things I don't like about the 1022 is that a lot of times they don't come with sling swivel studs in them. That's kind of a pain. You know, for such a great rifle, you think it would just have holes for a sling swivel stud. You know, it's not hard to drill holes in them and put sling swivel studs in there and put sling swivels in there, but come on, it's a practical rifle meant to be used. It probably should come with sling swivel studs. Now, the stocks, there's nothing wrong with a factory Ruger 1022 stock. If you want something nicer like a Boyd stock, then cool. If you want something with a pistol grip because you are, again, going for a tactical trainer, then by all means do that. But the Ruger 1022 stock, either wood or synthetic, they're not bad. Boyd's, if you want a laminate stock, if you want like a really grippery, impervious to the elements, Hogue overmolded rubber stocks are good. There's a lot of good stocks. There's a lot of aftermarket stuff for the Ruger 1022. The stock would be one of the last things I would be concerned about upgrading. It doesn't play in as much for accuracy as like a center fire high pressured rifle does, because you're not getting anywhere near the barrel whip and vibration and harmonics that you have to deal with a center fire rifle. You can upgrade stock if you want. There's nothing wrong with that, but the one that comes on it is pretty good. Now let's talk about some more specialized things. What about a tactical trainer? Well, if you're setting it up, then you probably know the rifle that you're training for. Now, kind of ironically, coincidentally, whatever, the actual manual of arms for the Ruger 1022 is pretty similar to an AK-47. It's got similar sights. It's got a kind of similar magazine removal. Not exactly the same, but it's not just a straight insert and push a button and it falls out. And it's got a reciprocating side charging handle. The safety's different, the magazine locking system is a little bit different, but actually it's got a lot more in common with an AK-47 or an M1 Garand or an M14 for that matter. It's got a lot more in common with that manual of arms, right? Reciprocating right charging handle. You can't make them hold open on the last round or not. That really depends on how you want to set up the system. If you're going custom, you can make it go either way. But they're a really good trainer for those systems. If you want it like an AR, you can kind of get there. You can put a pistol grip on it. You can put good peep sights on it. But you're still not going to have a charging handle. You're going to have reciprocating you're going to have that side charging handle instead of the rear charging handle like on an AR-15. But you can get similar sights and similar ergonomics, collapsing stock if you want, pistol grip if you want. You can kind of make it look like an AR, but functionally it's a lot more honestly like an AK. But you can still get a lot of your marksmanship training in, right? If you're learning or doing up drills or target transitions, right, really doesn't matter. Now, if you're working on your speed reloads, you probably want to do that on your full-size gun. Just do it dry fire. But you can get a lot of the way there. And you're going to know what rifle platform tactically you want to most make that analogous to. So you do your research on that. But for tactical trainer, the ergonomics, things like pistol grip, actually, if you're running a factory mil-spec AR trigger, which are pretty bad, you can just run the factory Ruger 1022 trigger, and that's also pretty bad and pretty gritty and a lot of the same foibles in that. So you might just run both of those factory triggers. But you get the idea, right? If you like a 2-stage 3.5 pound in your AR, then run a 2-stage, if you can find one, 3.5 pound in your 1022. Make it similar, right? I like a single stage flat. If you can find a single stage flat for that Ruger 1022, then go for it. What about if you want to go varminting, which is one of my favorite things to do? Prairie dogs, whistle pigs, ground squirrels, marmots, I'll kill them all. And I don't apologize for it. They carry the Black Plague. They can destroy all kinds of environments and farmers' fields. I used to get issued damage stamps, and it seemed like literally the prairie dogs would come in waves, and they would just, in these farmers' fields, these alfalfa crops, they would just balls and waves of them. You could literally shoot them as fast as you could jam mags. And you'd have one guy jamming mags and one guy shooting, and they were just, I don't know how many, just crazy amounts of prairie dogs. They just overwhelm the landscape because they have an artificial environment with all this seed that's put out to feed other things, and they take it. So if you're looking for a specialty weapon for that, you're probably going to want a longer, thicker barrel. Not necessary, but a longer, thicker barrel, because you're going to have higher rates of fire. And because that barrel is thicker and has more mass, it's going to heat up more slowly and cool down more slowly, which means that your point of impact shift is going to be less. That's why bull barrels are a thing. So you might look at a longer, heavier bull barrel. That's one of the cool things about the 1022. You can swap out the barrel fairly easily. 2 screws in the front, and then you put the new barrel in and you put the apparatus back on, that locking block or whatever they call it. It's real simple. So you can change out the barrels fairly simply if you want a bigger, heavier bull barrel for that. Now, there's nothing wrong with the fixed 4, but for varmint hunting specifically, like long range prairie dogs, marmots, things like that, you might want to go with a little bit higher end, higher power anyway scope. A 2 to 7, a 3 to 9, something to 10, 2 to 10, 3 to 10, 4 to 12. That's fine, because for that kind of hunting, you generally aren't walking a lot. So it doesn't really matter. You might put a bipod on it or sand. I usually just use the sandbags or some kind of bag rest. But you might want to go that route, and a good trigger. And a good trigger and really good ammo selection. Don't overlook the ammo selection. I've done other episodes on 22 long rifle you can look up. But ammo selection is important for pretty much anything, but especially for this, for varmint hunting. Make sure you get the right ammo. A good standby for that is your Ruger 1022 and CCI Mini Mag. The 30-something grain hollow points go together like peanut butter and jelly. So if you don't know what else and you're going varmint hunting, look at the CCI Mini Mags. They're a good balance of dependable, accurate, and affordable and available. So the CCI Mini Mags, I'm not sponsored by CCI, they're kind of the standard, right? So again, they go with a 1022 like peanut butter and jelly. But there's a lot of other good ammo, but if you're just looking for something for varmint hunting, that would be the one, and you have a decent setup for varmint hunting. Now, let's talk about the ultimate survival 1022. Now, that really depends on you. A lot of people think the 22 is their go-to, most apocalyptic loadout ever. It's super lightweight. The ammo's super light. It'll kill a elephant I'll take down any pachyderm with a 22 long rifle with a well-placed shot, and it's the most deadly round because it tumbles and spins and turns into a blender inside a person. Or there's all these kind of myths around the 22. The 22 is good and capable and certainly is deadly, and certainly a lot of people have been killed with a 22 long rifle. It's not great for it. You could haul lumber with a Prius. You can get it done. That doesn't make it a great vehicle for hauling lumber. Do it a little bit at a time. You can get the job done. The 1022 is a good survival choice, though. It is a great small game hunting tool, and it is capable for defense. It's not great for it. It's a deadly round. So a lot of people do choose it for survival. Here's when I would. If you give me no caveats, I'm not picking a 22. I know a lot of people get mad at that. I'd pick something else, which I've covered in other episodes. But if you told me that I had to cover like a super long way on foot, like if I was stuck behind the Iron Curtain, which is what I call the Mississippi River, because every time I go back there, it's just full of people and just choked, and I don't know, I don't like it. So if I was trapped somewhere east of the Mississippi and the peanut butter and chocolate was hitting the fan and I had to walk back to what I consider free America, the Wild West, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, and I had to walk that distance on foot and carry the ammo with me that I could carry, yeah, the 22 makes a lot of sense for that. If I was configuring a gun for that, or for that type of thing where I was going back east and if something happened I wanted to be able to walk 1,000 miles or 1,500 miles, the 22 makes a lot of sense. How would I configure a gun like that? Well, I'd go with the takedown just for ease of transport, and if I had to go through a hostile area, then I would not want it in the takedown configuration. I'm not going to be like, oh, excuse me, thugs, adversaries, give me a minute. I know you're about to kill me, but let me dig in my pack and assemble my Ruger 1022 and put a magazine in it and charge it and then get ready for the fight. Probably not going to have time for that. However, there may be situations where I'm moving through an environment and it's more advantageous for them not to know that I have a weapon. And I should have my CCW, right? I should have my EDC because I'm awake and I'm out of the house. So why would I not have a gun on my hip? So I should have my handgun at the ready. And there may come a time where I'm walking through an environment where it's more likely to get me in trouble if they see I have a long gun than save me. And the whole point of survival is what? Staying alive. So if me being able to hide that gun more easily keeps me alive, then that's a good thing. So the 1022 takedown makes sense for that. So a 1022 takedown, of course in stainless. You don't even have to ask. Of course in stainless. I would want a threaded barrel on the front, not for some super cool secret can, for just a flash hider, and not even to hide flash, because I'm hard on stuff and I beat stuff around, and I want it to protect the muzzle, because the crown of the rifling, the muzzle, is very important for accuracy. So I'd want to protect that crown. So I'd want to thread a barrel on it for that. I would want a decent trigger. The BX trigger would be fine, or the Volquartsen trigger system. I'd want the ammo that gun shot well, CCI mini mags or a Gila Super Extra or something. I would configure it with backup iron sights, because I think on any kind of serious weapon you should have backup iron sights, and I would have a red dot on it. Because if it is for defense or for fast small game, a red dot is fine. And it takes batteries, I know, but again, it's got backup iron. So when the batteries are dead, I just take it off and throw it away. It's fine. While I have it, I have it. So a good, like, pistol size, lightweight, because the whole purpose of this is to be lightweight. So I don't want some giant abomination of a scope on the top. And I especially don't want a big scope on there if I'm trying to use it for defense. So a red dot sight, like a pistol sized red dot sight that's easy to take off, that I can take off without some kind of specialty hex head wrench or something, where I can just take it off and throw it away when I'm done with it. But while I have it, I have it. And good iron sights, keep it light, keep it simple, couple of spare mags. That's a pretty good setup for, in my opinion, an all-around survival 1022. Now, I do believe the patrons have pictures of my actual 1022 survival setup. I had one set up fairly similarly previously to this that got stolen out of a vehicle, which is kind of sad, but I've since replaced it. Praise God. And I think they have pictures of the whole setup and have had. Maybe I'll make one of those a thumbnail for this picture. Maybe I'll put in another picture of me with a 1022. I should mention that I briefly flew over it. I do like the threaded barrel versions of the 22, not because I think you got to put a can on there, not because I think you're going to be a super sniper, because I like to protect the end of the barrel. Now, if you don't have a threaded barrel, they do make some aftermarket, or at least one that I'm aware of, that slips over the front sight and kind of screws in, and you can actually protect the muzzle that way. If you want to do that, you might look into it. And again, I'm hard on stuff. And not only that, but I like to teach kids and new shooters, and they're really hard on stuff. They'd be dragging the muzzle through the gravel or whatever. So having that muzzle device on there simply to protect the muzzle is a good thing. Now, for competition, I have done quite a bit of competition shooting. I'm not really going to get into that because that would make it a really long episode, and I could do an entire episode on setting your gun up for just Steel Challenge. And the Ruger 1022 is a great gun for Steel Challenge, and a lot of people shoot Steel Challenge with tricked out 1022s. But you probably should go somewhere else for that resource and just look specifically at you're going to set it up for Steel Challenge. But if you want to shoot Steel Challenge, I'm going to say just go to a match with the 1022 that you have and just shoot the match and just have fun, because you're not going to win your first match. Just go and have fun and be safe. You're going to be so overloaded with information and sensory overload. Just go and shoot with what you have. Don't go think you're going to trick out your gun because you might one day shoot a Steel Challenge match. Go shoot with what you have, then you'll figure out what will make you better. And kind of the same with the new long-range 22 stuff. I believe they mostly use bolt actions for that. That's a competition I have not shot, the long-range 22 stuff. But again, very specific. If you want to get into that, go with what you have and then look specifically into how to get better. If you were, I don't advocate this, right? But if you have young shooters, new shooters, a woman that's really all she's going to shoot is a 22, a 1022. Again, I don't think the 22 is the best for defense. But if you were going to set up a 1022 strictly for defense, and again, I'm not advocating this, I'm saying if you're going to do this, you might really look at a decent, and I wouldn't even go pistol size for this because this is not supposed to be a mobile gun. This is not a bug out gun now. This is a home defense gun. And again, I even hesitate to do this because I'm not saying it's a great gun for home defense. Get a shotgun. But if this is what you have and what you're going to use, or what the only gun that the person is going to train with, put a good full-size red dot on it. Something like that's made for an AR. Now the mounting height's going to be different because it's got a swept-down stock. ARs have a linear stock because of the buffer tube. Without getting too technical, make sure you get the proper size mount, which is going to be much lower than your typical mount for an AR, which is what most red dots are. But if you get the right mounting height, a really good, high quality and large red dot, get a decent white light mounted on the front. There are several ways to do that with a 1022. You could just get a stock that has rails on it. It could go that way, but a good white light and a good red dot and a good sling. Now, if it's for home defense, I'm not a big fan of single point slings, but that'd be one of the few times you just grab it and throw it over your shoulder. For home defense, the big reason for the sling is so somebody doesn't grab the gun and shoot you with your own gun, which is a lot harder if you have the sling around your body. So a single point or a 2-point sling for home defense, but you got a good red dot, a good white light, and a good sling. And practice, practice, practice. So those are some thoughts on setting up your Ruger 1022 for X, Y, or Z. There's a lot of other stuff in there that I didn't cover, but hopefully this was helpful and a way to think about how modular and what a good weapons platform the Ruger 1022 is. It is a great small game hunting rifle. It is a great trainer. It is a great just rifle, period, which I think is one reason it's so popular. If you are a regular listener, does this describe you? Regular listener to Gunfighter Life, you appreciate content without all the blasphemy, without all the foul language, without all the ridiculous, overblown marketing hype. You gotta have this, you gotta have that. All the cool kids are doing X, Y, Z. You better do it too, or you're not gonna be cool. If you enjoy a show like that, without all the marketing hype, with good content. You want to support a small business, American, veteran-owned and operated, right? All the buzzwords, gluten-free. If you want to support that, if that's you, if I just described you, become a patron. There should be a Patreon link in the show notes. If you appreciate the content and you want to support it and you want more content, then step up and support it. That's how that works. There's plenty of other places you can go for gun content where they'll pump you full of vote for this person, vote for that person. You got to have this new, $2,000 optic, or you might as well just shoot yourself in the foot on the way to the range. There's plenty of that content out there. But if you enjoy this kind of content, Judeo-Christian values, no blasphemy, no taking the Lord's name in vain, you're a strong Christian man that knows the importance of defense, of training, of feeding your family, things like that. If that describes you and you want to support, become a patron. There should be a Patreon link in the show notes. Okay, with that, your tactical tip of the day. A simple pencil. Just a regular number 2 pencil like you may have used in grade school. A simple pencil. If you are trying to sight in, as I was recently, iron sights on any gun, including a Ruger 1022, it can be an exercise in frustration. Sometimes you want to move the sight a little bit and it moves a lot. Sometimes you want to move it a little bit and it doesn't move, and then you hit it and then it moves a ton. To make sure that you're not wasting a bunch of time and ammo and resources, take a simple number 2 pencil or a mechanical pencil or whatever, right, and mark where the sight is before you go to move it. That way, when it does move, you've seen how much it has moved. And if you move it, let's say 1 millimeter, and it moves your point of impact on the target 3 inches, and you need to go 6 inches, that gives you a pretty good reference point for how much more that sight needs to move. Trust me, it can save you a lot of frustration. Instead of just guessing and being out there for a long period of time and wasting a bunch of ammo and getting frustrated because you moved it, and you moved it too far, and now you got to move it back, and it's still not right. And then where was it when you started? Right, just a simple pencil can save you a lot of frustration. And then you can erase those marks, and when you get everything set, you can mark your sights with the proper dope, and then if they do get hit or do move, then you'll know. You'll have a visual indicator of that, a simple pencil. You can also use that pencil if you have like one of the synthetic black stocks or whatever to write your dope, data obtained during previous engagements. You can write your rifle settings and dope on the stock, like 0 to 50 yards with CCI mini mags. However many inches low at 100 yards, however many inches low at 200 yards with CCI mini mags. You can just write that on the stock. And it's semi-permanent, right? Unless you actually erase it, it'll stay on there for a while. If you switch ammo or whatever, switch sighting systems, you can just erase it and write it on there again. A simple pencil. That's your tactical tip of the day. Whoever commits sin is a slave of sin, and a slave does not abide in the house forever, but a son abides forever. Therefore, if the Son makes you free, you shall be free indeed. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.